Welcome back into the film room. I'm your host, Erik Turner. As always, joined in the film room this offseason by Anthony Prohaska and Kendall. Kendall, let's start with you, man. What's going on, brother? Welcome back home. You were on the road for a little bit or what?
Yeah, I'm exhausted. I've been on a plane, didn't get much sleep last night. No, I'm good. Just got back in from Oakland, spending some time with the girlfriend, making up for missing Valentine's Day. So that was good.
Oof.
Still got to watch football, still got to watch some golf, still got to do some stuff that I like to do, but of course you still got to make time for your girl. So went and did that. Still brushed up on my linebackers, but yeah, I won't steal too much of the football talk here.
No, that we're happy to have you back in the film room again. Yes, I think your homework was completed for this week, obviously on the linebackers. But Anthony, of course, your homework was completed probably a few days ago. But again, thanks for joining me in the film room again. Another week, another off-season, podcast episode about some free agents, man. So with that said, talk about how your homework was this week and what you had going on, man.
Sure. First I do want to shout out Kendall. He got off a plane like an hour ago
I did.
and busted home to finish stuff and be here with us. So major shout out to Kendall for putting it into overdrive and getting here. Corner has been, I don't want to say an obsession of mine, but it is. For
It
years.
is.
I got a real problem. And I'm anticipating just being really sad and let down come free agency and the draft once again. It's the first position group I started with, scouting for the draft. It's a group I've spent a lot of time with in free agency. And so here we are in this episode. There's some quality corners in this free agent class. And then obviously, you break down that into who fits the Buffalo Bills from a scheme perspective and an ability perspective. And then you break that down further, like, okay, well, what kind of contract are they going to command? What kind of value are they going to bring? Do they fit into what the Bills are going to do, given they don't have a ton of cap space? We did the salary cap spectacular several Fridays ago, and we're able to finagle our way into about $26 million worth of cap space. But that's obviously going to play a huge role. And so I dove into the free agent corner market from that perspective, found, several guys that I liked and think, could potentially fit and have been talked about a lot by Billsmafia. That's part of it too, right? Like we're trying to break down people that we see from a scheme perspective and see from film and stats and all that, but also from some guys who have a lot of chatter. And that was some of my focus for this episode tonight as well, specifically with two guys. And then the third is more of a personal favorite and, from that perspective, but it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it's funny. Yes, Anthony has an infatuation with corners. When we were doing like the draft stuff, he's like, "Yeah, I'll do corners." Like, all right, so now he's like 15 corners deep into the draft evaluation. And when it came to picking this position for free agents, he's like, "I'll take corners." Like he's doing us a solid. So that's definitely.
I gave first choice to others though. I was like, I'll take whatever, and then corner just fell into my lap. So
you gave the professor basically like that. What 10-minute rule is like a 5-second rule for Kendall. So you threw it out there, and of course, no one answered really, and like, okay, I'll do corners. No, I'm just.
I knew Ant was gonna want corners. I literally didn't speak up because I didn't want to take it from him.
Well, I appreciate you for that, but I will say, I have to say in my defense, I did not claim corner. I got corner because Erik was like, all right, cool, Kendall, you'll do LBs. Ant, you're going to do corners? And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
That's what happened. I got receipts.
No, I like guys that feel comfortable with who they're scouting, the position they're scouting. So that was definitely not a problem. And, real quick, going down a little rabbit hole, like scouting corners is not the easiest thing. It's very time consuming. And when you're talking about studying coverages, because you have to not just study the corner position, but you got to study positions around them, the guys that they may be working with in zone coverages, obviously how the quarterback is looking, depth of the drop, all those different factors. So yeah, I mean, it's not an easy position to scout. It's very much like scouting the quarterback position on offense, because there are so many different factors that go into your decision or your evaluation of a corner. So with that said, what we're going to be taking a look at is corners tonight. We're going to take a look at linebackers, as mentioned, and defensive tackles again. I'll be doing the defensive tackles, and let's get right into it. Let's talk about the cornerbacks on the roster, and some of the contracts that the Bills have, what the positional spending at the position is currently for the Bills.
So the current positional spending for the Buffalo Bills heading into the 2022 season is $24.96 million, which puts them at 9th in terms of cornerback positional spending, which I guess I didn't think it was going to be that high. I know Tre'Davious White is obviously really highly paid individually, but I didn't think it was going to be that high given what the rest of the roster at corner looks like, even with Taron Johnson's extension that he got in October of this past year. But you look at it, $24.96 million, again, 9th overall in positional spending going into this year. Players under contract, Tre'Davious White at $16.4 million, Taron Johnson at $4.5 million. So you basically have $20 million right there between two guys. And then everything else gets a little dicey and with some more variables and question marks. You have Cam Lewis at $925,000, Dane Jackson under 9, Nick McLeod at around 8, Tim Harris around 7, and Elijah Griffin, shout out to the regulators, around $700K as well. It's a group that I think it's the reason that it's been so highly talked about, especially this offseason, last offseason as well, but especially this year as well, when it comes to the depth of this position grouping, because you've got Tre'Davious White and you've got Taron Johnson, but after that, what do you really have in this position grouping, especially from an outside corner or a boundary corner perspective? Like, there's a lot of question marks when it comes to this group.
Yeah, Kendall, what are your thoughts on, obviously, the Bills didn't have Trey White last year, and we saw how much that affected the defense as far as coverages go for most of the season, like at least the second half of the season.
Yeah, for sure. It starts to get super limiting, and you really do depend on your scheme and just people holding down their zone. I think the main thing with this cornerback group is really the lack of depth behind Tre'Davious White, and this has been a thing for a while, and we've been fortunate that he's been so healthy for so long. But yeah, seeing as that Levi may not be back, and there's no guarantee that Trey White's going to start the season healthy. He might not start till November. You gotta pad that room. You gotta give it something. You don't want to rely on a rookie to come in there day one and have to contribute in that way. They're not going to be as comfortable in the scheme as a Levi Wallace is. So yeah, you're going to want to supplement that room with a free agent, even if you are drafting one early or late.
Yeah, and Anthony, I'll throw this to you real quick. So when you talk about needing depth versus starter, that's obviously something that we're going to get into tonight, and when we talk about some of these free agents. But I want to get your thoughts on Dane Jackson's season and maybe what, if they were to lean on him to become the new Levi Wallace, what does he bring that maybe Levi doesn't?
I feel like he gets put into that similar mold as Levi Wallace by Bills fans. I feel like people see both of them as interchangeable, and excuse me, to a degree, I get where it comes from, but Dane really excels in zone coverage. We talked about it early in his rookie year. His comfortability level with the scheme coming from Pitt, his ability to use zone eyes, his ability to peel off and leverage in space and recognize routes from other sides and support. Like, he's a really good zone corner, and he's good coming forward. He's physical. It was never going to be a good thing that Tre'Davious White was out for the year, but the fact that 2 of Dane's starts came against the New England Patriots, like teams that wanted to run the ball, Dane is good at coming down and crack replace and setting the edge and making tackles and being physical. And that's really what he brings in his game, like that strong zone capability and that ability to come forward and be physical and make a tackle. But he does have limitations, again, much like Levi. The long speed isn't there. The man coverage ability isn't necessarily there. He plays with good enough technique, but it's not good enough technique to the point where it can overcome the limitations that he has. But nonetheless, he's a reliable corner. He was taken for a reason. And in spot duty, again, like, I know he gave up some plays and was beaten from time to time, but I don't think you look at him as a liability. I don't think you look at him as someone that's like, oh God, we have to put Dane Jackson out there.
Right.
I don't want him necessarily as the corner 2 and the outright starter. I think he's terrific depth, someone who can start in a pinch and relieve you if there's, something going on for a 1 to 2 or 3 or 4 game stretch. But because he does have those limitations, it limits his game, and then it limits the secondary and thus the entire defense as a whole.
Yeah, totally. And I like Dane Jackson. I think he brings a lot of the same things, but I think his tackling is better than Levi. Levi has improved in that area, but I do think that Dane overall is more consistent, especially when it comes to the run. He triggers downhill, crack replaces with the best of them. I do like him versus the run. So I think if they were to let Levi, test free agency and eventually lean on Dane Jackson to be that next Levi Wallace. I think the Bills would be all right because when we talk about free agency and the draft, I think they will address it for the future. And obviously, Trey White's injury is going to play a major part in that. So we're not talking about just personnel. Let's talk about the scheme in the 2021 season and how the Bills, decided to defend offenses, especially once Trey White went down. What are some of the cornerstones of the Bills' defense last year, Anthony?
Fantastic question, Erik. And I'm very glad that I get to use all the detailed notes that I put into our Word document here that we share. So, as we know from a DVOA perspective, the Bills first in overall defense and first in pass defense. I know everyone has that recency bias of what happened in the game against the Chiefs. That's a quick point I wanted to mention as well. We all know what happened against the Chiefs. The Bills are still a good defense, but even good defenses have matchups that do not favor them. I think it's super funny how people talk about the 85 Bears all the time, and no one ever really wants to talk about how the Miami Dolphins completely shredded them, and that was their one loss on the year because the Bears defense, 85 Bears defense, one of the greatest defenses of all time on an individual scale, was not built to face an offense like the Miami Dolphins. You have certain offenses that throw scissors and you have paper, and it's not a great matchup. So that recency bias aside, this was a good defense, leaning their hat on the pass coverage. And we know this Bills defense is a zone defense, a primarily zone defense. So they were in zone 58% of the time in 2021, which was 17th in the league. They were in man coverage 29% of the time, which is good enough for 11th. So I know man coverage and a little more scheme versatility is something we'd like from corner two. But seeing them holistically towards the top 10, I think is a very interesting stat for people in terms of how much man the Buffalo Bills play. They used two high coverages, so two safeties with the middle of the field open on 43% of pass snaps. That was the sixth most. And they used single high looks with the middle of the field covered 44% of the time, which was 20th. And then if we're breaking it down into actual coverages and perspectives like that, 119 snaps in cover one, wink, wink, which was seventh most in the league, 66 snaps in cover two, which was 15th, 24 snaps in man cover two, which was 19th, and then 119 in cover three, 101 in cover four, which was 8th, and 11 in cover six. So again, you see from the numbers going back to that 58% zone, they are a primarily zone defense, but they will mix in some man from time to time. The main thing, Erik, like you mentioned, what we saw, what switched with Tre'Davious White was the way they would attack certain offensive formations. The Bills defense has those checks and those keys based on personnel and alignment from offenses, and Tre'Davious White factors into that heavily. You would get the Chiefs examples or the Chiefs game is a good example. Week 5, we would see the Chiefs run those 3-by-1 sets, and whether it was Kelsey or Tyreek Hill as that lone receiver, you'd see Tre'Davious White as that, man-on-man guy. He would run that meg coverage, that man everywhere he goes, and you lose a bit of that with Tre'Davious White, being out. So that affected things down the back end. They leaned more on zone, but they still mixed in man because they like to disguise their looks and play games with the offense.
Yeah, and Kendall, talk about maybe some, I don't know, like foundational aspects of, what the Bills want from their corners. And I'm not just talking nickel because nickel's kind of squared away, but outside, what type of traits do the Bills like as far as, coverages maybe coming up versus the run, especially when you consider that, they're playing these two high coverages, all that out, obviously a lot. What are some traits that the Bills front office looks for in corners?
I'd say one of the easiest ones to point out is that ability and willingness in run support. And you see that so evidently in Dane Jackson and then how they ended up developing Levi Wallace on that side of the field. So I think that's something that's important to them. They drafted Rashad Wildgoose last year. He was excellent in run support with his college tape. So I think that's another feather in the cap for that. Obviously, we're all more concerned on the coverage side of things, but we can't diminish that value and that trait that the Bills look for, because it's been pointed out and evidently clear to us over the years. I'd like to think length is a big part of it. Not necessarily a disqualifier, but I feel like just based off some of the archetypes, and I know, Erik, you'll get into the archetypes more for this position, but based on the archetypes that Bean and other people in the player personnel department for the Bills have drafted at the position, I feel like now that they've squared away this kind of quick, twitchier, on the smaller end of the spectrum in Trey White, you kind of want to find that complement that's a little bit longer, can play in press coverage and use that length to their advantage. So I think that's something that we may see. I mean, Levi was a lanky guy. I don't want to say Rashad Wild Goose was or anything like that, but I think that's something that they value on top of that. But then, of course, with cover 1 and cover 4 being the two most primary coverages that they play, you want to have good zone principles, being responsible for a fourth of the field. And then you want to be able to, conversely, be able to flip your hips and have good hip fluidity and efficient footwork if you're going to be asked to play man coverage in cover 1. So a lot goes into this trait wise, but I'd say some length and some run support are two things that they're probably going to be looking for.
Yeah, if we're talking about, trying to find a corner like Levi Wallace, obviously length is a big factor. Height is another factor. A guy that is comfortable in off coverage, because a lot of times that field corner that's usually to the passing strength is in off coverage a lot. A guy that can read combinations, again, because you're to the passing strength so often. You have Trey White as a boundary corner, locking up number ones to the isolated side. Overall, since Bean has been in the league, in Buffalo and in Carolina, the height in inches, the average height in inches for corners for the Bills and the Panthers were 71.7 inches. The weight was 194 and a half pounds. The arm length, 31 and a half. 40 is about 4.5, so about average speed. 10-yard splits, 1.57, almost 1.58. So you can see, yes, arm length, I think, is going to be a factor. 31 and a half isn't, it's not extra, it's not long, but it's also not short.
It's longer than,
the shortest guy that they have had on the roster, free agent and draft, shortest arm length, I think, was, let's see, Leonard Johnson, slot player back in 2016. He was a free agent. Obviously, Taron Johnson's 30.875 inches in arm length. And Drayton Florence back in the day, 30 and a half inches. So those are just some of the archetypes and numbers and thresholds that, you need to pay attention to for the Bills, and obviously Brandon Bean, more so the draft and undrafted free agents. But it does play a factor in free agency, and I'm sure that some of the guys that Anthony picked tonight will kind of, fall in those type of parameters. And one of the guys we're going to talk about is Akhello Witherspoon. First of all, Anthony, what were your thoughts on watching some of his film this week?
He was an interesting one because I liked him a lot in San Fran, and then he had that rough game, I believe, against Minnesota. No, in the the NFC Championship, the year they went to the Super Bowl, and then didn't play much in Kansas City. Left, went to Seattle, ended up being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he was a name that, again, with, like I mentioned earlier, with looking at how the Bills have spent money in the past, especially when it comes to the corner position, they have very much been about, okay, Tre'Davious White, and then let's patchwork, no disrespect, let's patchwork together corner 2, whether it was an undrafted free agent, Levi Wallace, whether it was Kevin Johnson or EJ Gaines or Dane Jackson. There hasn't been a lot of investment and allocation of resources, either monetarily or from a draft capital perspective, when it comes to corner 2. So I started with looking at guys, okay, who fits from a talent perspective and kind of from a scheme perspective, but then also who can come in from a monetary standpoint and be able to be realistically looked at. Witherspoon is coming off of a 1-year, $4 million contract. I think that's fair in terms of what we're looking at again for him. Maybe he gets a multi-year deal, but even if he does, it's still going to be kicking around, I think, between that $3 to $5 million range. I think 4.5 is that sweet spot based on how he played last year. And you got his strengths and weaknesses up there. He's comfortable in press. He uses his length. He can function in both man and zone, which I think is a nice thing that we're all kind of looking for, a little more scheme versatility. He's also able to flip both sides. He's able to play on the left. He's able to play on the right. So he's not somebody that's specifically boundary, or field side or short side. He can do both. And you notice his athleticism, and he also has a noticeable burst, especially when coming forward. He's got a good explosion when he's coming forward, making plays. But he also, again, does have some weaknesses. That's why you're going to see the monetary value attached to him. He does lunge when it comes to tackling. He doesn't bring his feet, so you'll see him come forward and kind of stop and then just literally lunge forward with his upper half, and it leads to a lot of missed tackles. His footwork can be messy and a little clunky at times, despite the fact that he is an athletic guy. And then he can be threatened vertically. He lets guys, especially in his back pedal, we all know the old receiver adage or offensive adage, like if you're even, you're leaving. He lets guys get even too much. He lets guys get into his back pedal, and before he gets into that turn, they're gone. Whether it's a technique piece or he's relying too much on his 4.45 speed, he can be threatened vertically and inside routes as well. In breakers, posts, slants, he gives up that inside, and then he's not the best at recovering and trying to, overtake and reestablish leverage.
Yeah, and something that we've found looking at some of the PFF stats is you mentioned he's a lunge tackler, and him and we're going to get to Donte Jackson are kind of the same boat when it comes to tackling, probably for different reasons. But it seems like, versus the past, you saw Donte on film and Witherspoon at times, I'm sure, miss some tackles. We're looking at PFF coverage grades here. They're, basically their coverage stats. And if you look all the way over to the right, you're going to see the pass play tackling. And obviously we talked about tackling is pretty big for the Bills defense here. And Witherspoon, when teams pass against him, he had issues bringing guys down. Again, this is just for 2021. So, I mean, when you look at his career, maybe that's not the issue. Maybe that's just, the Pittsburgh scheme. But last year he missed tackles at 36.8% rate. If you scroll down, I mean, there's some good names. J.C. Jackson's 9. You can see Rock Ya-Sin, a good corner in the league. He's at 17.2 missed tackle percentage against the pass. Patrick Peterson, William Jackson. So, I mean, even Trey White's down there. So Witherspoon's atop the list, but that's just something to keep in mind. When we get to some of the film and when you guys are looking at some of these free agents, yourselves offline, not here on the podcast. So with that said, man, let's get to some of the film about, obviously what you saw on film, because when we look at these guys and we're scouting them for what they can do for your team, not what they can't do. What are they going to add to the team? What are they going to add to the defense? And obviously you thought that Witherspoon could add some really good things to the Bills defense. So with that said, man, I'll let you take it away.
As I mentioned in the first little graphic there, he is comfortable in press man. He's comfortable using his length. That's where he's at his best, I would say. When he's able to get up on the line of scrimmage, he's able to use that size. Again, he's a big guy. He's 6'2", 195 pounds. And then we talk about arm length, right? The Bills like guys with 31.5-inch arms. He's got 33. He's long. He's physical. This is a good example of it on that play. He wins like this route or this play, this snap, however you want to go about it, right off the bat. Yeah. And the interception is what gets the highlight. But the reason he gets the interception is because of the physicality and how he wins with the press. Like, he gets that jam in, almost long arms, and like kind of like he's about to stack and shed the wide receiver. He gets that extension, establishes that control, muscles him right off his route, disrupts everything completely. This is the 3rd and short. I believe it's a 3rd and 4. So he knows where the sticks are. He knows what he can do within the 5-yard, limit for defensive backs. Gets real physical. And then what's nice too is the angle that he takes here, right? Yeah. When the throw comes in, he cuts this off. And this is where you can see some of that burst that I talked about. He takes an angle and just explodes right through. Takes that angle, wears down a little bit towards the end. The Steelers defense was gassed by the end of this game. This was that game where the Vikings went up like 26-0 and it looked like a boat race and the Steelers started coming back. So he wears down a little at the end, but you see that functional burst right here for him to be able to jump that route. Cousins probably shouldn't have thrown it. But this is a huge win for Witherspoon in a route where he just completely dominated the snap right from the jump with his physicality and his ability to win in press man.
Yeah, and Kendall, you heard Anthony talk about the length and how it's obviously good for man coverage, press in those third and short situations, third and medium situations when you can get that corner up on in press. But obviously, it's also good for zone too, as well, right? Those long arms, it really shrinks those passing lanes and passing windows down the field, right?
And that's the key. It's the shrinking of all the passing windows. I don't want to bring this back to people like Tremaine Edmonds, but when you play a zone defense, all of that length matters because there's such a wide field you have to defend, and having more length helps close those passing windows. And even more than that, it helps get your hands in there on the catch point. So it's not just closing the passing windows, it's also the ability to get to a catch point that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to with 3-inch shorter arms.
And that's a great lead in here, right, Anthony? So on this plays and off coverage, go ahead and break it down for us.
Yeah, so again, we're looking for scheme versatile corners here. So that first clip we showed Witherspoon in man. The second one we show in zone. What I like about this one too is it's a good physical play, but it's also a good play from a mental standpoint. So it's 3rd and 20 here for the Cleveland offense. Witherspoon is playing the sticks. He's in that bail, opening up, looking towards the field, being able to see the receivers, being able to see the quarterback. What's really nice is he keeps dropping back and you see him stop. He sticks and he just kind of reads everything that's going on. And then he just, again, you see that functional burst. This time from a static position, he just jumps like almost right from the 50, almost to the 45, goes right through Donovan Peoples-Jones. Also, really nice snow angel celebration on the pass breakup. Like that's real quality, but you see that burst and that athleticism, but you also see the physicality at the catch point. And I think that's a key thing from him as well. You're 6'2", you're 195 pounds, you got 33-inch arms. Can you use your size? Can you use your physicality? Can you use your God-given ability to your advantage? Because all that length and size and weight, it doesn't mean anything if you can't use it appropriately. And that clip was nice because it shows what his size can do in his zone coverage, how he leverages space, but also from a mental standpoint, he understands the situation, what his role and responsibility is. He's able to leverage all that together and make a pass breakup. And again, that point too, I know you might say like, well, it's 3rd and 20, that's easy. That was a point where Cleveland was starting to make a comeback. If they complete that pass, it's like a 15-yard gain. All of a sudden, it's 4th and 5 instead of being 4th and 20. That's a go-for-it situation on 4th down rather than a punt and a win for the defense.
Yeah, I liked Witherspoon a lot back in 2017. Obviously, when this regime kind of was, just getting into the building, I liked him for his length, for his size, for his ability to play that cover 3 with those long arms. When McDermott was coming in, I thought he was a great fit, and I think he would be a really good fit in the scheme even now. Even with how much the 2 high looks that you talked about. I think he would be a really good fit. And you saw, one of those plays was that 2 high look off coverage. Again, keeping everything in front of him, using that length at the catch point. All great things about Witherspoon. With that said, let's move on to probably your favorite of the 3 guys you're going to break down.
Not probably, definitely.
So tell us about Callahan here, Bryce Callahan from the Broncos.
So Bryce Callahan, somebody who he stuck on my radar all the way back in 2020. He played more outside corner in 2020. He has outside corner and nickel corner versatility. But in 2020, where he was functioning a lot as an outside corner, he had a 46.9 passer rating against, which was the lowest amongst all corners in the league with at least 100 cover snaps. And then watching the film to go back with that, you see his strengths pop off right away. His ability to maintain leverage on vertical routes, his smooth feet and hips. He's got a real quick trigger regardless of where he's coming. If he's breaking on an outside route, if he's breaking on an inside route, if he's coming forward, you see that quick trigger, which is nice. And he's got good recovery speed. And again, I mentioned that coverage versatility. Inside, outside, left corner, right corner, short side, wide side. He can do a variety of things. The biggest weaknesses from a technique standpoint, honestly, there's not too much. His overall size, he's 5'9", 188 pounds with 30 and 5/8 inch arms. So he's a little on the smaller side, but he doesn't get bullied. You don't see him, get tossed around by the Darren Wallers of the world. You see he's able to hold his own from a size perspective. He can be too aggressive in run support. From time to time, you will see him miss a tackle or two because he is too aggressive. But the biggest weakness of all is his overall availability. He missed 6 games in 2020 with an injury that he carried over from 2019, where he missed all of 2019 with a foot injury from the end of 2018. He missed 7 games this past year with a knee injury. When healthy, he's a very, very solid corner, but he's had issues staying healthy, and that's obviously a huge concern and a huge reason why his price point could potentially get knocked down either in terms of dollars or in terms of length in total years for the contract, because he does carry that injury tag with him.
Yeah, and what I found interesting about him, obviously, yes, the size, that's more of a slot corner, especially in the Bill scheme. But, if Taron Johnson hadn't been extended, I think he'd be a good fit there. But what I found interesting, doing some background research on him prior to the show, was the fact that the new Bills defensive assistant, Jalen Finner, the new coach, on his profile, it says he's assisting linebackers on the defensive side of the ball. He actually played with Bryce Callahan at Rice a few years back. And so it was interesting. It was interesting to hear that. He said that he was, obviously a baller back then, and that, obviously hitting free agency at this point. Hopefully he's looking to cash in on the good play over the last few years, because I know you've gushed about this guy and how well he is with his feet, very sticky feet and good in coverage. So it would be nice to have a corner like that. I just don't know where he would fit, but he looks fair. Like he would be, a really good corner to add to that versatility element that we talked about all the time the last couple of years now with corners. Like, let's get some guys in here that can run a little more man coverage if they need to be, if they can win with their feet, not necessarily with their, off coverage. Like, put them in off man, put them in tight man coverage, let them mirror wide receivers. It would have been nice to have a guy like that against Tyreek Hill. I know it's hard to guard Tyreek Hill with his speed, but having a guy that can mirror wide receivers when the Bills want to go to man coverage, something that, they used Kevin Johnson in that role a couple of years back, and I thought he held up pretty well. So let's dive into the film from Callahan here. So I'll let you run away with it here. He's to the top of the screen.
Yeah, he is to the top of the screen. One quick piece I wanted to mention also about that versatility is because he can also function in a nickel role. God forbid it doesn't happen, but we have seen Taron Johnson, because of his aggressive style, he's gone down and he's missed some time from time to time. It's nice to have a guy on the roster who can function in that outside world, but you know what? Let's kick him into the inside. And then if we have a rookie or Dane Jackson functioning on the outside, so he gives you the scheme versatility, but also alignment versatility as well. So that's another feather in his cap. This first clip here in man coverage, here up at the top of the screen against the Raiders. And this is honestly like everything you want to see. He opens up and he's just all over the receiver from the time he makes the break. He reads this coverage. He understands what's coming at him. There is absolutely no separation for the wide receiver. You can see he's reading the quarterback through the receiver, doesn't let the receiver out of his sight, stays in phase, a la Roger McCreary, who from Auburn, who we broke down in some Senior Bowl tape. You see just the fluidity. You see the technique. You see there's no wasted motion. You see the hand placement. You see the breakup at the catch point where he comes through the receiver, but not to draw a flag, and he gets the pass breakup. And I set up a little pause here on the end zone angle because I really wanted to show what are you supposed to do as the wide receiver? There is no separation. That is blanket coverage. And this is something you see time and time again from Bryce Callahan. And man, he will get beat time to time from some double moves. I got a Miami Dolphins clip coming up later. Jakeem Grant put him in the spin cycle a couple times with some really great routes. So he will get beat from time to time like any corner, but a heavy majority of the time, Bryce Callahan is showing traits like this and having film clips like this where he's just all over his man and there's absolutely nowhere to go. And again, he can function in zone, but having a corner with this type of man coverage capability adds a lot from a weaponry perspective to your secondary.
Right. And Kendall, this is a single high coverage, obviously man coverage here, but they're also doubling Hunter Renfrow right here. So they're telling every other corner, every other player that has a man in coverage, hey, you're on your own. We're doubling their best guy. We're taking that guy away. And you see, I think this is Ruggs running that deep over out a la Tyreek Hill. And they left Callahan on his own. And these in-breaking routes versus single high coverage, that's a bread and butter. And to be able to stop this play on a dig route is very important for a defense, especially when you're trying to take away the opponent's best player at wide receiver.
Yeah, even if the safety was over top helping and he wasn't going to bracket onto Renfro there, even if he is just in single high, usually you would have your corners trying to work them back in towards the middle of the field, back in towards that safety. And you see he's trying to do that, but his safety is so deep, he's taking the deep over route. And even with giving that leverage on that dig route, he still fights through the hands and breaks up the pass. That's what's so impressive, how sticky he was at the top of the route, through the stem of the route, the entire time he's in phase, like you said, and it's just perfect because it keeps him and his specific archetype in the perfect position to make a play on the ball. Otherwise, if he's too far away from it, he doesn't give himself a chance because he is more of a shorter, stouter guy.
Right. And so the second play here, Anthony, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, this one's nice. It comes on a 3rd and 15. The previous play was on a 3rd and 7, which is even better for that man coverage there for him to be able to recognize the situation. What I liked about this one is it's a 3rd and 15, but it goes in conjunction with several plays earlier in this game. Callahan had several opportunities to bring Josh Jacobs down behind the line in this game. But like I mentioned earlier, he came up too aggressive, wasn't proper in his angles, and he got beat around the outside and just was not in proper fundamental technique coming up and trying to make a tackle. What's nice about this one, again, 3rd and 15, zone coverage. You see him dropping, and you got to pause right there. You see him break, right? He stops on that back foot right as Derek Carr starts to pump to Waller in the middle of the field. So he knows he doesn't have anybody threatening him vertically. He sees Carr having to look underneath, so he already starts to come forward because he knows where Josh Jacobs is. So he starts to break. And then look at the closing ability for him to just, again, recognizes what's going on in front of him, sees the check down, click, close. We talk about it all the time. What kind of trigger do you got? Can you click and close? And he comes down, and what does he do this time? Under control, right? Fundamentals, techniques, and is able to break down and make the tackle. This angle shows it even further, right? So Carr looks to Waller, looks away, gives it to Jacobs, and I highlighted it again. Boom. Wide base, he's in control. It is the opposite of what he did on the previous drive and earlier in this game where he was just coming down out of control. Doesn't make a huge, flashy tackle, not sexy, gets his arms out wide, gets around the legs, that alligator style of rugby tackle that we're seeing perpetuated in the NFL nowadays. It's a nice technique piece, but again, it's a nice adjustment from what he was doing earlier in this game. And it shows the ability to, again, not only function in the coverage, not only to come up and make a tackle, but that mental piece and recognizing, okay, what I did earlier didn't work. Let me course correct. Let me settle down, make the safe, smart play, and then get the Raiders off the field.
Yeah, he did a great job of closing that cushion, closing that distance as
Really
quick as he could, and then breaking down, scalloping in, making the tackle. Again, take away the green from a player in Jacobs that is very dangerous. One-on-one especially, and that's a really nice tackle for him in the open field. And Anthony, here's the third play this game. He's playing against the Dolphins to the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, so he was lined up a lot on Jakeem Grant in this game from Miami. Again, this is all 2020 tape for when he was focused more on the outside. And I mentioned this is some fun tape from a Jakeem Grant perspective. He had a couple routes in this game where he just made corners look absolutely foolish. I didn't know he had that type of route running capability on him. But this is against a dude, again, Jakeem Grant. He runs a 4.38. He is a burner. This is the first play of the game. Jakeem Grant tries to hit him with that little double move. And what's nice about this one is you see Callahan start to break down a little bit because he reads the break in that double move. Jakeem Grant comes out of it fast, gets right back upfield, and you see Callahan, one, not lose because of speed against a dude who runs a sub 4.40, which would be nice for the Bills defense. But two, you see him get back in phase by using some of that hand technique, establishing some leverage, and then he's reading the receiver's eyes and body language, turns his head at the anticipated catch point, doesn't draw a flag, locks this down, makes it hard for Tua to make this a completed catch. That's also something, right? Even if he gets beat, he's making wide receivers work. If he gets beat, it's because a receiver ran a great route or made a terrific contested catch. And at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing you can ask for from your corners, right? Are they able to make life difficult for their opponent? He does it regularly, time after time, opponent versus opponent, different types of archetypes of wide receivers that he's facing. I like this one and wanted to show it because, again, we've seen issues with the Bills' corners and vertical routes, speed. Jakeem Grant's a burner. He can fly. Callahan runs a 4.4 40. And when you combine that with the technique in man coverage, one-on-one ability to win vertically like that, that's a big thing.
No, that was a good rep. Confidence in his skills. He knows who he's going against in Grant. A burner, as you said. Didn't have any safety help. Safety was shaded to the top of the screen away from him. He was on an island against Grant, and that was really good coverage. And I want to wrap up the cornerbacks with, a fan favorite, but I will say it's an AQ favorite. All right. Donte Jackson, one of, Aaron Quinn's favorite corners, favorite free agent corners, I should say. It's a guy that, I also liked coming out of LSU under Dave Aranda back in the day, a few years ago. So talk to us about Donte Jackson, what you liked and what you didn't like.
So the first thing that I think people are going to like is the speed overall. I should have probably just listed that for all three of his strengths, speed, and speed. Dude can fly. He runs a 4.38 40. And what's nice is he's got that kind of speed that shows on tape. He's not one of those guys that you're like, really? Him? Like, he showcases it. He's smooth and athletic in coverage. He's got nice movement skills. He's a boundary corner. I shouldn't say boundary corner, but more of a wide corner. He can play short side. He can play wide side, but he's also got some slot functionality. Watching him against the Minnesota Vikings this year, seeing him travel in man coverage in the slot with Justin Jefferson and going one-on-one with him was a nice thing to see. Having, again, coverage versatility from a scheme perspective, but also from an alignment perspective, right? And then he's got that long speed and that short area quickness. The weaknesses that he has, and they're legit. He does get grabby on stems and breaks. You will see him if someone's running like a 10-yard in breaker at 10 yards, he reaches out, he gets grabby. His tackling overall, from a numbers perspective, it's not terrible. In 2021, he had a missed tackle percentage of 9.1 versus the run, 20% missed tackle percentage versus the pass. That's when it shows up the most. But in the games that I watched, he did struggle coming up, making plays in the run. You won't know it from one of the clips that we're going to show. You wouldn't think his tackling is suspect. And then he's vulnerable, as I mentioned, on those in breakers. And that also could be due to the scheme, right? You're in zone coverage. Somebody runs a slant, somebody runs an over, a dig, whatever have you. You might be expecting some help from one of your defenders on the inside of the field. So that's not all on him. But when he is beat, it usually is with those in breaking routes.
Yeah, Kendall, obviously you're a big draft guy. I'm sure you got to look at Jackson a few years ago, maybe even some time in Carolina. Real quick, what are your thoughts on Jackson and maybe his fit in the Bills defense?
I mean, it's all about the speed. It's all about the ability to guard that deep ball, guard the vertical routes, and open up the ability to play more man coverage, as Ant has been so adamantly pounding the table for. He is someone, his skill set, his traits really work towards the ability to do that. But I don't want to take too much away from what Ant really wants to shed light on with Donte Jackson.
I wanted to just talk super negative about him because Aaron likes him so much, so it was hard to find good stuff.
Yeah, and when I was browsing the clips here on Jackson, I was like, man, Anthony, you picked some really good clips on Jackson.
Yeah,
almost to the point where like you're gonna get the fans to believe even more. But obviously there are some things that as you talked about, some negatives on him. But let's get into some of the film clips that you did pick. Again, these are things that he would bring to the defense. Obviously. We're looking at these guys and what they can do and not necessarily what they can't do.
Right. And that's also a key point too. I think with a lot of it, we were having a discussion on Donte Jackson in the DM today for Cover One, and a lot of the likes from the guys on the team come from the belief of, okay, he's got some traits and some ability.
Yeah.
You plug him in with this defense and they can help him, be the best version of himself type of thing, raise his floor, raise his ceiling. And I think that's fair. And, as we're going to show in these clips, starting with this first one, he's got some ability. This one's real nice. This one's on Justin Jefferson. We all know what Justin Jefferson can do. He's already one of the best route runners in the NFL in his second year. He's one of the fastest receivers in the NFL as well. He's smart. He's heady. He's got technique. He's got physical ability. And this is he and Donte Jackson lined up one-on-one, getting to the danger territory of the field. And Jefferson tries to shed him a little bit with this double move, and there's just no bite from Donte Jackson. Nothing. He's just patient. You see him focused in on the hips of Justin Jefferson. He's not taking any bait. He's just watching. That is textbook how you draw it up. Jefferson is trying, his heart out to beat and shake Donte Jackson, and there is just nothing. Part of it, I don't even want to break this down. I just kind of want to be just watch the top of the screen and then let the play go. And not to mention the situation of where you're in, that helps a little, right? You've got the sideline, you've got the back of the end zone. So playing that situation, knowing where you're vulnerable, but also knowing how you can use that situation to your advantage. He does all of that combined with his physical ability. And it's just a really great rep again versus one of the best wide receivers in the NFL who's doing a lot here, that could take advantage of a corner, and it just doesn't work on Jackson whatsoever.
Yeah, Kendall, and we talked about a little bit on Callahan. I mean, confidence in your ability, and you can see the confidence again. Motor mirror steps by him to the top of the screen. Confident in opening up. Confident as Jefferson looks like he's going to be breaking it off over the middle here. Confident that that's not the case. They're going to drop his hips just like him, and then again, just mirror him. Look at how calm his feet are. Look how calm his demeanor is. And then Anthony nailed it. This is a third down situation, fringe of the red zone, the area of the field situationally that offensive coordinators like to take the shot. You got the single high look. You got a one-on-one matchup, Jefferson versus Jackson, and then you just see Jackson squeeze him into the boundary, make that throw even more difficult down the field. Don't give him that, 2 to 3 yards along the boundary that the, wide receivers like to, hug that red line as they call it. I mean, this really is a textbook play. And one of the reasons I said, Anthony, this is a damn good clip and film reel that you picked for Donte Jackson.
Yeah, it's a sexy play. And, again, it's a high leverage situation. Fringe of the red zone, third down, complete ownership on that play. And you see that smoothness and athleticism and coverage translate right there. This one, so I want to preface this one. Pause it real quick because I don't even want you to show it in slow-mo. I want you to kind of let it play fast speed first because he just absolutely wrecks Justin Jefferson here. But he got burned, Donte Jackson did, several times on this route earlier, including one against Adam Thielen, who is not as fleet of foot as Justin Jefferson, right? Jackson came up, didn't come up in enough time, comes flying up, and Thielen literally just catches it and sidesteps, and Jackson goes flying. Opposite happens here. He detonates on Justin. Oh, here it comes. I'm just going to let it. Crushes him. Absolutely wrecks him. Whether you're watching it in slow-mo, whether you're watching it in real time, I wish I had the volume turned up. I wish I could have this game on TV and recorded it because I bet the pop was good. Again, you see that speed, that functional speed, that quickness, that burst. What we also didn't mention on the play before, right? Being able to play that close to a receiver with the speed of Justin Jefferson and man coverage, you're able to do that when you yourself are a very fast corner. Something that the Bills corner twos have not had. Donte Jackson is comfortable getting in the kitchen of the receivers a little bit, even dudes who can fly, because he knows he can fly. He runs a 4.3 40. You run a 4.3 40. Cool. So do I. I'm good. Let's see what you got. You see it with dudes going vertical, but you also see it on these short routes with his ability to get forward so fast because he has the short area quickness, but also that longer speed, and he just barrels forward.
Yeah, I love the click and close on this from Jackson. We talked about, him and Witherspoon's tackling issues, especially in the passing game, but this wasn't one of those plays, Kendall. This is one of those plays that actually one of his 11 stops versus the pass, which obviously when you can have a corner that can do that, that's actually a plus for him.
Yeah, it's few and far between, but you like to see that it's something he can do. It's not something he's consistently struggling with. Right. Hey, you can see it's part of his game that he can do. It's something he can improve on. You can see it's there. You just got to refine it. But I really want to focus on the point that Ant just made about what speed can do for you and how you cover guys in what certain routes. Like the confidence to be able to play an off on this and be able to close because he can close that ground quickly is massive. And conversely, on the play before, how confident he was in that double move because he's confident in his own recovery speed. He doesn't have to be so worried about being beat over top. It's an element that we haven't been used to.
Anthony, onto the next play here against the Dolphins, man. I'll let you take it away here. Again, speed kills.
Speed kills. This is my favorite one. So Jackson is highlighted, but this isn't a coverage rep really for Jackson. This ball goes to Jalen Waddle over the middle. It hits him in stride coming from the bottom of the screen. Waddle catches it in stride and takes off. Jalen Waddle, tremendous wide receiver in his rookie year. Extremely fast. Extremely fast. I'm going to say it one more time. Extremely fast. He gets this ball. You've highlighted him there with the arrow. Jackson, who you highlighted with the other arrow at the top of the screen and who you highlighted to start, is kind of just hanging out. He sees Jalen Waddle get this ball and sees all the green and watch him just take off and chase down Jalen Waddle. Again, it's not all about speed this offseason when it comes to corner two. I think people can get lost in that. It's not just like, well, just get a corner with speed. That's all we need. No. You need someone with awareness who understands the position, who has the technique to function in the coverage schemes and ways that the Bills need them to function. We showed that with the first clip. We showed it in the second clip. This one is just pure speed. Oh, this end zone angle shows it even better. You see his beautiful dreads flapping in the breeze. Look at him, just the angle, the effort, the pursuit, the speed, chases Jalen Waddle down from behind. While, again, this is a huge point too, Waddle is already in stride and at full speed. Jackson is in a static position. He has to gear himself up. Not only does he do that, he gears up and he chases down a wide receiver who runs a 4.3 740. The speed is real, both short area and long. It shows up on the tape, and that's not the only reason to like Donte Jackson, but it's an element that this Bills defense does not have. This Bills defense does not have a burner, especially in the secondary, but on the defense as a whole. Yes, Milano's athletic. Yes, Edmonds is athletic. Tre'Davious White, Poyer, Hyde, but none of them cook. None of them run sub 4.4. None of them run 4.3. None of them are ticking the 95-plus Madden speed box. Donte Jackson does that, and it adds another layer in a variety of ways. It shows up consistently.
Yeah, those are three corners that we believe are decent fits for the Bills defense. Again, some of them adding more than others, whether it be speed elements, whether it be length elements, versatility. Obviously, there's some really good corners on the free agent market. It's going to be interesting, including Levi Wallace. It's going to be interesting this free agency period when it comes to corners because there's a good amount of corners on the market, and obviously a team like the Bills, they're kind of up against it, and not having their cornerback two, Levi Wallace, who's been there, who's been steady, who's been consistent over the years, Kendall. Losing him and letting him test the market again. It'll be interesting to see if he gets a contract finally, because last year he didn't, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is he going to be open to coming back here for less than what he's worth? Because he's definitely earned some money this year, especially with Trey White going down and holding down the fort with the #1 pass defense in DVOA. There's something to that. He had a great season, so he definitely earned himself some money, but he might have priced himself out of Buffalo. It's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, one guy I got to look at just a little while ago prior to going live was Sidney Jones, a Seattle Seahawk. He had a 1-year contract last year. Obviously, a guy that's been riddled with injuries.
Yeah.
But I think obviously he had a really high ceiling, had all that potential. Injuries kind of derailed him a little bit over the last few years. But he's a guy I think schematically fits. He's a guy that's probably going to get less money than Levi Wallace and the Donte Jacksons of the world. I think he fits value-wise. I think he schematically fits. And again, adds that element of length and being able to pattern match and read route combinations and off coverage. I think he has a little bit of everything that we are looking for in corner. So he's a guy I think that, free agent-wise, I think they should be looking at, when it does open up. Kendall, I'll give you the floor real quick. Maybe another guy or two that you are looking to in free agency.
Oh, the main one that I'm looking to in free agency is Casey Hayward. In my opinion, I think they should go back into the well of a vet cornerback to bring in and help this room. It would be nice to have a vet there practicing with the guys, because obviously Trey White is the vet of the group, but if he's not practicing, he can't give pointers on the fly during practice, stuff like that. So I'd love to get Casey Hayward. He has a lot of zone work, especially last year in the Raiders system.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of pairing a vet at the position who still has some gas left in the tank with a early round pick. That way, there's just a lot of on-field development happening within that position group. So that's the guy I'm really interested in, but I don't know what his market's going to be like, because age changes a lot of things when it comes down to what they're going to get paid. So I'm going to have a close eye on that.
All right, so let's transition to defensive tackle. Position I scouted this week, a position I scouted for the Senior Bowl. So I, like Anthony, have a favorite so far this offseason. And it's because the Bills, there's a lot of unknown at the position. In 2020, the Bills overall, defensive tackle and defensive end, they had the second highest spending at both of those positions. They spent $43.5 million on their defensive line in 2020. And this year it was 20. Now it's going to be 23rd in 2022. So there's obviously a lot of unknowns. You got at defensive end, it's Hughes, Addison, guys like that are hitting the market. But for the Bills at defensive tackle, guys, it starts with Harrison Phillips, and he's a guy that we kind of talked about when we were doing the Senior Bowl stuff. Obviously, he's a free agent, 318 snaps at one tech, which is the second most last year in 2021. He was second in points saved per SIS at 11.31. So 11.31 points saved versus the run. He was second in points above average at 4.62 at one tech. He was, points above average per play was 0.025, which was the sixth best. Tackles per game at one tech, number one, 2.9 tackles per game. Average depth of tackle for the one tech, he was 11th at 1.9 yards. And finally, overall, per Pro Football Focus, 13th in run stop percentage. Obviously, one tech is a need. Even with Star Latula, they still technically under contract, but the feeling with him is that he's probably going to walk away, and it's not going to be because of Brandon Beane and the contract that he gave him. It's probably going to be for his own well-being, walking away from the game. So really, there's a lot of questions at one tech. Obviously, the Bills really only have, aside from Eli Anku, is Ed Oliver at three tech. And obviously, if you guys haven't had a chance, after this show, get right back onto the YouTube channel, take a look at the Ed Oliver breakdown I did. I got a little help from the big guy here on the breakdown leading into that. So, last year Ed Oliver broke out. Fifth in run stop percentage, eighth in pass rush productivity per Pro Football Focus, 48 total pressures, 6 sacks, 30 QB hurries. But the 12 QB hits, guys, that is really where I am standing by with him. Obviously, there's like 3 or 4 sacks that were kind of called back because of penalties, offsides, yada, yada, yada. 12 QB hits was the third most among defensive tackles overall. And that to me is saying that, yes, he had a breakout season, but there's an opportunity, Anthony, for him to actually add a handful more of sacks next year. The processing came together along with the physical skill set that he possesses. Ed Oliver was probably the most consistent defensive lineman for the Bills last year.
Yeah, he had a monster year, and the sack numbers are unfortunate because I feel like people just focus on sacks too much and they see the numbers, but whether it's Bills fans or non-Bills fans, and they see the numbers and they're like, well, I mean, he didn't do anything. Like, he didn't even have 10 sacks, and it just doesn't tell the story. I remember, Erik, you and I doing the film room after that Thanksgiving game against New Orleans, and just his hand technique, his understanding of rush angles and lanes, and his ability to just do whatever he wanted in a variety of ways up front. Yeah, he exploded in 2021, and I don't think, to your point, he's hit that ceiling. And so we could see another jump from him. And what would be amazing is if not only you could see a jump from Ed Oliver, but if you were able to add some depth or functionality to the defensive tackles position, so that way he doesn't have to shoulder so much of the burden. He had a top 5 double team rate. It'd be nice if you could kick that down a little bit, maybe able to pair him with someone or a multitude of guys who can take some of that burden off him a little bit and allow him to continue on this upward trajectory that we've seen so far.
Yeah, and Kendall, I brought up some of the adjusted line stats. So on the defensive side of the ball, to kind of give you guys a little context about the Bills defense last year, because Aaron in our DMs this afternoon, he said it a bunch of times that there's a lot of recency bias and how the Bills lost to the Chiefs, and Anthony alluded to it earlier in the broadcast. But overall, the Bills had a good defense, and regardless of what stats you looked at, they were ranked really well in a lot of advanced metrics. And here are some of these advanced metrics showing you from 2020 to 2021, some of the adjusted line yards. We'll start with that. First of all, in 2020, they were ranked 19th. In 2021, they were ranked 4th. So you saw an improvement there. Power success rank, and last year in 2020, 7th. And this is where they had a drop off. In 2021, they were ranked 29th. And power success rate really just means 3rd and 4th down and 1 to 2 yards against the run. How were they? They were terrible. They were ranked 29th. And I pulled up some more stats on that. They allowed a first down run conversion in those situations. So 3rd and 4th down, 1 to 2 yards, 68% of the time, 17 out of 25 situations last season. And if you look at those situations against a pass, they allowed a first down 57% of the time. So Kendall, some of these stats, again, very telling. Some of the stats are an improvement. Some of them, they kind of dropped off a little bit. And it starts up front. It always does. It starts in the trenches, adding, obviously, a starting nose tackle, whether that's Harrison Phillips or someone else in free agency in the draft. And they also need kind of that rotational hybrid player, a guy that can kind of bounce back and forth between 3-tech and nose tackle. That'll help the defense, especially when you're talking some of these stats.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. It's like we need so much on the interior because it's literally just Star and Ed, and it really could just end up being Ed and Eli. It's so thin there. And you look at that power success rank, and obviously that's the thing that everyone's focusing on. Like I almost feel like people could have guessed that we were 29th or lower in that stat just without even seeing it. It's obvious we need a better run stuffing presence. Harrison was great at it. He got a lot better, but it can't just be him. And we saw it towards the tail end of the season. It was just him. And obviously there's no guarantee he's coming back. So we got to make sure we plan for that. Hopefully get more stout on that front 4. And then, like you said, still got to find a hybrid guy that can mix between the two, because you don't want to have a guy that's so inept on pass downs that they do end up doubling Ed. And that other 1-tech is just so bad at pass rushing, he doesn't even command double teams with his 330-pound strength.
Yeah, and we're looking at the adjusted line side. Look at the stuff rank, Anthony. So these are tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage. In 2020, they were 11th, so not bad. Last year, they were 2nd. I mean, and a lot of that had to do with, those run blitzes where they'd slant the defensive tackle and defensive end inside, bring Hyder Poyer off the edge or bring Milano off the edge. So those run blitzes, those run stunts on 1st and 2nd down and long. So they did get a lot, they did improve in that area. But then you look at the open field stat where the runs of 10 yards or more. In 2020, they were 18th. In 2021, they were 31st. So it's like a Jekyll and Hyde type defense when we're talking about the run defense.
I think it's even tied to the scheme and the way they play it with their one-gapping technique and their aggressiveness up front. It's almost like a double-edged sword. I think it's the positive with the stuff rank, because you see there's times, whether it's on the run blitz or the stunts or whatever have you, games up front, they get penetration and they make a play in the backfield and you see it. And then other times it works against them, like we saw against the Indianapolis Colts, where they're just running traps and whams and they're getting gouged for 15 to 25 yards a pop. And that's the nature of where this Bills front has been living, as a one-gapping, smaller, aggressive, penetrating type of front, and combine that with a light box, right? If they get into their gaps properly and everything works out, boom, you see a tackle for no gain or a 1 to 2 yard loss. But like the numbers showed, you're going to see times where that either A, works against you, or you're just outgunned and you're not able to gap out up front. And then you get nailed for those big runs, whether it's up the middle or outside, but especially in the spine of that defense.
Right. And so one guy that I know you guys are thinking, okay, another former Panther, just like Donte Jackson.
Exactly.
But he was only there for a year. He played with the Titans too, and he played really well. I think he's a guy that really fits that nose tackle primarily, but also, again, he played a lot of snaps at 3-tech. They shifted their defensive tackles all over the defensive line. He had a 58.9% snap rate last season, a veteran, 6'4", 322 pounds. Very sudden, though. For a big guy, he's very sudden in that short area. He splits combination blocks with arm overs. He splits combos by shrinking his surface area and kind of turning that shoulder, getting into his gap, getting skinny. Athletic, big guy. I like his hands, though. Violent hands, very aggressive. When he punches out and stacks offensive linemen, those guys, they feel it. Some of the weaknesses, he's a bigger guy. He's got good short area quickness, but his range is limited. He can only get, tackle along the offensive line. When there are some combination blocks, when there are some feed blocks where you're seeing that, the adjacent offensive lineman kind of, bang him over to the other offensive lineman to help with leverage. That can happen at times. He doesn't recognize it as quick. And then he just has a limited rush set of plan and counters. So he's very limited in that regard. But again, big guy, up the field type guy, which is more of what the Bills generally like. They like those big guys, the Vernon Butlers of the world. They just like them to be better and good at defensive line. So liking those big guys up front that can get up the field, not necessarily guys that are two gappers, which is what we're kind of hoping they look to in free agency in the draft. But I think this guy fits really, really well. I'll get your quick thoughts on this, Kendall, on Jones from Carolina.
I mean, yeah, all the stuff you just laid out is exactly why he's such a realistic target, because I think the key is we all want that two gapper, that big guy that's just going to eat up space. But let's be honest, the Bills haven't targeted any of those guys. They've clearly shown that they have a type, and this is as close as we can get to best of both worlds, where it's like we get that bigger dude, but he's also showing the one gapping type tendencies that the Bills like from their interior defensive linemen. So that's kind of what I keep coming back to with a guy like DaQuan Jones.
Yeah, and I'm letting some of the clips play here, but I want to get to this Tampa Bay game. Obviously, some of those clips were against the Dolphins, and we know their offensive line hasn't been all that good. But okay, big guy. Here he's basically an outside shoulder, so he's more of a 3-tech here. Or, I'm sorry, he's a shade nose tackle here, and he holds a point of attack. So you see that feed block. It's not a good one, but he's able to stack and extend, keep that lineman at arm's length, and really cut off any type of run that may kind of bounce out this way. Keeps that hemmed in, and then as soon as the running back commits north and south, he just, again, uses that arm over, disengages, makes the tackle on the running back there. This play right here is kind of shows off some of that range, but more so his processing of the play here. So I'll let it run. Again, more of in a 3-tech here, 4-eye, but he notices the run blocking concept and how this defensive tackle is kind of getting up the field. So you see him just scrape down the line of scrimmage and really leverage the ball here really well, Anthony, down the line of scrimmage, making the tackle right at the goal line.
That's a really good play, that ability to scrape and recognize. And like you mentioned it in the lead-in for this, that range that he's able to display. That's something that you need the functional point of attack strength, but in the Bills defense, you also need to be able to be athletic and display that range, especially considering the way that they play, the games they play up front, the type of stunts and slants that they use. This is nice seeing that, again, because the whole idea of this is looking for what guys can do and how it fits with what the Bills do. This is him displaying an archetypal design and functional trait that the Bills covet, the Bills like to employ, and it's nice to see him use it in a key high leverage situation down there by the red zone.
Yeah, here's another one, and it kind of shows off again that dancing bear type defensive lineman. They shift him into a shade position, and then you see that arm over. I talked about those run blitzes and how a lot of times the Bills will kind of slant these guys inside and then bring a guy off the edge. Watch this quick arm over off the snap here on the center. And again, this is against a really good center, a really good offensive line. He's able to swim that guy and just blow that play up, attack the ball, make the tackle on the running back, Kendall.
Yeah, this is an excellent play. It really goes to show, like Ant, you just kind of alluded to, you got to have that strength at the point of attack. Make sure you're not getting reestablished from that line of scrimmage. But this is a nice little wrinkle where you can show some agility, some suddenness at this size to sidestep some blockers, and not only sidestep the blocker, but get into the backfield and make a play on it. The ability to finish is huge on that play, not just what he does at the point of attack, but what he does afterwards once he wins.
Yeah, he's again a big guy, but a guy that can win with some quickness, with some agility. Here's some clips from the Bills game where he took Spencer Brown to the house here a few times in this play. Just really just took him out back and beat him down towards the end of the year here. He just manhandled him. Brown has a long way to go, obviously, but Jones is a vet, man. And again, he plays with good leverage, bigger guy, can stack and shed, but also can obviously penetrate up the field. A guy that I really, really like and was surprised to see that, he may hit the market. I think if he does hit the market, he's going to be a very affordable defensive tackle, unlike the next guy we're going to take a look at. So I brought up Reed here from the Chiefs. He's a guy that the Bills liked in the draft a few years ago. He's a guy that the Bills, there were rumors that they were trying to pick him up prior to the Chiefs signing him. 6'3", 307 pounds, a guy that's probably going to be a little more expensive than Jones and maybe some of the other defensive tackles. But if the Bills don't bring back a guy like Phillips, that extra money could really be invested in a guy like Reed. Also a guy that is very versatile, Anthony. He's a guy that can play nose tackle, 3 tech. He's got the length, power, and quickness to process runs, run to pass. So, that's a big thing when the Bills are showing those light boxes, those 6-man boxes, the majority of the time. The front 4 have to process run to pass because obviously, run fits and run gap integrity is really big for this staff. And being able to stack, put your head in the gap, and then process, hey, it's a pass. Let's get into a pass rush move, a counter of some sort. Really important for a defensive lineman in the Bills scheme, which is why they really kind of like to have the defensive linemen that have length. He's got that very good lateral range. He can work down the line of scrimmage much further than a guy like Jones on those outside runs. Good sense of, when screens are setting up, he, while he can penetrate up the field, he is really cognizant of, when offensive linemen are kind of playing their pass sets soft and setting up the screen. I saw several times in games where he got fooled on one play in a run fit. 2 plays later, they try running it again, and he blows it up. So he learns on the fly, which is incredibly important. His torque, with his length and his natural power, he can just scrape down the line of scrimmage, keep a guy at arm's length, and then just torque a guy, throw him by on the cutback, as we'll see in some of the film. And then, those pass rush, the pass rush ability. Bills like to run a lot of 4-man rushes. You got to be able to run some stunts. You got to be able to run some games. And he has that type of agility that can really make a difference versus the pass, Anthony.
Yeah, I think that 4-man rush part is so key. The Bills were in 4-man rush mode 76% of the time in 2021, which was the 9th most. We know how much they like to rotate the defensive line and keep guys fresh up there. So the guys that are in there, they run a constant group of guys through, and all of them have to be versatile. You can't have someone that's just pigeonholed into one role, because when you're rotating so much, you have guys that have to wear multiple hats. Reed is a guy, whether it was his time at Alabama, his time with Seattle when he was drafted into the league, even his time with Kansas City, as you mentioned it, he can line up at different techs, different shades, and offer you functional ability and play at all of those. And to a defense like the Bills that relies on their front 4 and likes to rotate that front 4, that's an invaluable asset.
Yeah, and so we'll get to some of the plays I chose here. So here's a play, again, recognition and ability to quickly shed here versus the Titans. Watch him immediately recognize that down block from the center, or that back block from the center there. Guards pulling. And oh my goodness, it's just like quick, boom, I'm off. I'm obviously shedding that guy and then shutting down the run from the backside here. Again, not just stacking and leveraging his gap. He's shedding the block here, Kendall, and making the play in the backfield. This is the type of stuff that the Bills really could, again, they were second in stuffed rank here, courtesy of Football Outsiders. But Kendall, these are the type of plays that if they can get it from their defensive tackles, whether they're shade or 3-tech, I mean, this is what they need to pair Ed Oliver with.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if he's lined up 3-tech, 1-tech. This guy has the hands in this way where you can see he's just quickly active and heavy with those hands where he can just throw his guy aside. And that's what's so key on this play. He reads it, processes it quickly, like you said. And yeah, he's not doing the thing where he's just stacking and playing both gaps, because that's not what the Bills do. He's quickly throwing him aside and disruptive. And that's really everything that the Bills defensive line is predicated on. It's getting upfield and disruption.
Can I say something real quick? This goes into that previous play. So Nick Bolton goes to the left side of the center there like that. I believe it's either to the A or the B. I don't remember. This is the type of play. Oh, so he goes into that A gap. This is the type of play that if Jarran Reed doesn't make it and Henry cuts back, like what happens to the Bills all the time, this is the type of run where everybody says, well, Tremaine Edmonds picked the wrong gap and it's his fault that this run happened. This is an example of how you play team functional defense and why the defensive line, and especially the defensive tackles as the spine and the tone setters of the inside of that defense, why their play is so important, because it sets the tone for the second and third levels.
Yeah, and here's another play, again, showing that quickness, lateral agility. You see him just arm over and throw the center by, and now he works into the guard. Again, leveraging the play, leveraging that cutback that Henry loves to hit here. Jones forces the cutback on the front side. Now watch him shed the guard and go make the tackle with Jones. Like, both defensive tackles here making plays in the backfield against one of the better running teams in the Titans. That's the type of stuff that the Bills need from the defensive tackles. Ed Oliver's that guy. He's that guy that's forcing that cutback. But far too many times last year, I saw, especially when Star Lotulelei was in there, he's not holding the point of attack and being able to scrape down the line of scrimmage like he used to and make plays like Reed did there. And here's the final play from him. Again, working down the line of scrimmage. Watch that right hand and how he's able to keep that guard at arm's length. Process that play, feel that, the flow of the play is going this way and that the running back is looking to cut it back. He beats the running back to the hole and then, again, uses that length to bring down the running back on this play, Anthony.
That's a real nice one. Again, we keep showing these plays from him that are physically impressive, but it's the mental side of it that for me is really clicking, like the awareness to understand, okay, here's the flow of play. Like, it would be easy for him to continue to take that angle down and set up a really nice cutback lane for Joe Mixon. Instead, he recognizes that and has the awareness to recognize it. He's almost kind of two-gapping a little bit here.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Like, when we say two-gap, people think, oh, you want like the Vince Wilfork that you're controlling the A-gaps. No, not necessarily. You can still two-gap, in these up the field, one gap type schemes. Like, this is him two-gapping. His helmet, his eyes are in his gap, but he's forcing that cutback and playing the gap behind him. Yeah. And thank God he did, because look at, the leverage that the offense really has and Mixon has as a cutback here.
Yeah, he shuts down a potential big play opportunity in a high leverage situation in spot of the field. And that, I think that's something that kind of gets lost in the sauce. Like, again, like I feel like people see these types of plays and think like, well, your linebackers or your safeties have to make that play. But there's a lot that your defensive linemen and your defensive tackles in particular can do to really hinder or completely shut down certain aspects of the run for the offense. And again, being able to figure that out mentally and then tie it together with the physical piece and do it so quickly and shut it down. He's done that time and time again in these clips. And that's something, again, would be a really good asset for this defensive line.
And finally, just one play from a guy, Derek Noddy, his teammate, obviously a guy I was watching as an honorable mention, a guy that he's probably your prototypical nose tackle in today's game. Very stout at the point of attack, but I'm going to let this play. It's only one play from him. His ability to obviously track the ball, but again, talking about that two-gapping style, but that two-gapping from, those even fronts, not actual two-gapping like in those odd fronts. Look at how he plays initially the ball. He's tracking the ball there. He's tracking Henry, and then he gets his helmet right there into his gap. And again, Henry feels that. This is that, bang, bend type of run here. He's cutting it back. And he's cutting it back because of Noddy there. And when he does, he sheds, he makes a tackle on Henry. This is the type of two-gapping stuff we're talking about. Not necessarily 330, 340-pound nose tackles. That's just not feasible in today's day and age of a passing league here, Kendall. But again, talk real quick about Noddy here. He's a guy I really, really like as a pure nose tackle in the Bill scheme.
Yeah, this is probably more of your conventional, what you'd think of as a two-gapping look compared to what we just saw from Jarran Reed with the one-arm, long-arm hold there. But this is very much like squared up, like you said, even front, gets right up, helmet to helmet on his guy. And yeah, he peeks his helmet into the outside shoulder of his man and forces the cutback. And that ability to hold his man, keep that line of scrimmage, scrape across the line of scrimmage laterally, show lateral strength, and then shed with no problem and make a play to take down a 230-plus pound Derrick Henry. This is an impressive play for someone that you throw in that nose tackle role where it's just like, can they move like this? Can they do these sorts of things other than just the, stay in, zero tech in, two gap? So that's impressive stuff there.
Yeah, again, honorable mention. He's a guy that I know even AQ likes a lot. A guy I did a lot of work on when he was at Florida State a few years ago. If you go onto Twitter, just search the Cover One handle along with his name, and you'll see a bunch of clips there from his time at Florida State and even some of his time with the Chiefs. So with that said, that wraps up defensive tackles, and we're going to take a look at linebackers next. So Kendall, the floor is yours.
All right, so for linebackers, I'm going to start with positional spending and where they rank. Obviously, this is an area of concern for a lot of Billsmafia because we don't want to overpay our linebackers when we only have two of them starting. So the Bills are at 9th at $34.5 million of the cap, and that's 16.4% of the team cap. For whatever reason, Tyrell Dodson is not included, so I added his $895K contract into that. But obviously, if you've listened to our salary cap spectacular, you've heard that there's very clear reasons to cut AJ Klein this offseason, and by doing that, it would put the Bills in 11th for positional spending at the linebacker position, and only 13.95% of the total cap. So that's just one of those ways to kind of shrink it a little bit, make it feel a little bit better that we're not overspending on a position that only gets two starters. But we gotta be honest with ourselves. Linebacker is a very important position for the defense. So sometimes you got to pay for what you want. Currently we have obviously main guys. It's Edmonds, Milano, Klein, like I just mentioned. Medikevich is someone who's obviously mostly a special teams guy, maybe some sort of pay cut restructure type of thing going on with him this offseason, but that is yet to be seen. Then another special teams guy with Andre Smith, and I'm expecting him competing with Giles Harris and Dodson this preseason. So very curious to see how that tail end with the
Kendall, people have told me the Bills should trade Tremaine Edmonds and then Andre Smith can easily fill into his role. Is that true? I'll hang up and listen. Thank you so much.
How dare you? We're not going to go into this rabbit hole an hour and 20 minutes in. We will be here all night. No, we shouldn't do that. I have seen stuff, and I hope people see this as a moment where maybe I'm not standing Tremaine Edmonds. Guys, if Nakobe Dean is on the board and the Lions are like, hey, you want our 32 for Tremaine Edmonds, and you have an immediate person that you have a plan to go grab, then you can go and make a play like that. Like, we're all not over here saying the Bills need to re-sign Tremaine Edmonds. We're all over here defending that he's not trash. All right. So let's just get that out of the way, and we'll try to lay off the Tremaine Edmonds from now on. How dare you, Ant?
Welcome back from vacation.
So who was the first linebacker that you kind of outlined and scouted this week?
So the first one I looked at was Anthony Walker Jr. He's someone who started on the Colts, playing alongside Darius Leonard. He had a mediocre rookie season, didn't really get a lot of snaps, started to get more snaps his sophomore year, and really showed some stuff. Kind of didn't really do much more after his sophomore year, and then found his way onto the Browns this year and had a really solid season. Didn't play the whole season. I believe he got injured towards the tail end. And they use a lot of similar like sub like nickel type defensive looks. So it's him and like JOK out there a lot of the times, lighter linebackers, but he does good work. He shows that he can play in a base nickel defense, which is why I think he's interesting. I'm not necessarily looking for someone to usurp Edmonds or Milano because we just can't afford that kind of stuff. But I'm looking for someone that the Bills can sign to replace Klein at a fraction of the cost that we would get from his savings. And I think Anthony Walker fits that. He should come in at sub 5.1 million AAV. I'd be very shocked if he got more than that. He hasn't had a whole lot of production to merit much more money than that, but he's a very well-rounded athlete. His strengths, he has that passing down impact. He's very comfortable in zone drops. He has range and athleticism, despite what his testing scores will show you. Good understanding of run fills, not purely instinctive, shooting downhill and aggressive. He's kind of patient and lets the play come to him, and that then goes to his weakness of average depth of tackle at 4.9 yards. That kind of plays into his patient style of run filling, but he's a sure tackler, only 9% missed tackles on the season, and he's only 26 years old. Really only weakness outside of the A-dot thing, which is really, it's nitpicky. He has some false steps against misdirection, which is understandable, but the big thing is he doesn't add a lot of pass rush production in a blitz off ball scenario.
I got you. Yeah, so I'm trying to bring up some of the film here. We're having some technical difficulties, but yeah, Walker was a guy I was surprised, like, because he had some success early on in his days with the Colts, right?
Yeah, he was very successful with the Colts that sophomore year, and then he just kind of kept getting phased out, and then they kept drafting other linebackers. For whatever reason, they weren't sold on him. I don't have the answer to why. He seems very well-rounded. Seems like a fantastic third linebacker option, but for whatever reason, they wanted to move on, and he showed that he can be an average linebacker in Cleveland. So, yeah, not sure why they moved on, but they did. Yeah.
He had some nice plays in Indianapolis. And I think he was just kind of like, the odd man out when it came to Leonard, and then Bobby Okereke, who apparently is going by Okereke this year. So he changed a little bit, but yeah, Walker, he's definitely flashed at times, even with this Browns defense.
All right. So yeah, we're having some kind of issues with the film here. So let's talk about the other linebacker prospects so we can just wrap this up because we're having some issues here on our end. Let's talk about your next linebacker here. Who'd you pull up as your second linebacker?
So my second one is, here we go.
Thanks.
Camu Grugier-Hill. And that's a mouthful.
One more time?
Camu Grugier-Hill. He's actually someone who had a really good game against the Bills this season. I found he popped a few times in that game. He's actually converted safety. Yes, stop me when you've heard that before with the Matt Milano treatment. But
Matt Milano used to play safety?
I know, right? Never heard.
When?
But no, he shows good athleticism, nothing like crazy eye-popping. His RAS score will tell you otherwise, but that was when he was 205 pounds. So, yeah, now he's up to like 230, and, obviously things change. But he shows really, really good blitz production. This dude, for whatever reason, has good pass rushing chops when he's a blitzer. He has very active and violent hands, and he is relentless in his pursuit of the quarterback. It came up multiple times on film. I was shocked to see it. It wasn't something I was expecting to see, but it was very consistent. He was relentless in his pursuit of the quarterback. Another thing that popped out very clearly was his run game aggressiveness. Contrary to Anthony Walker, he is super aggressive. Grugier-Hill is super aggressive in his run fills. And because of that, I say this as a weakness. It's inconsistent with his gap discipline. He will open up cutback lanes because he's trying to make a play in the backfield, trying to make a play as close to the line of scrimmage as possible, as shown by his average depth of tackle at 3.5 yards. Something else I really loved about his game, he was really good at keeping himself clean at the second level. He uses that his athletic profile that obviously translated from his RAS score onto the film. His athletic profile to stay clean at the second level and not allow those guards to get a piece of him. He kind of sidesteps them and really just makes them miss and then gets in the backfield and makes plays. So he shows a lot of something you can work with. And that's why I'm interested in him. He's not someone that's going to, raise eyebrows and make crazy plays all the time, but he makes enough eye-popping plays to make you think, okay, we can work with the good and hopefully diminish some of those bad qualities, because I think if you can find a way to tweak this guy's aggressive play style into just a shade more conservative, he could be a perfect fit into this Bills defense.
Yeah, I talked about, processing, run a pass from a defensive tackle standpoint here. And here's one of the clips that you talked about, his ability to rush the passer. But look at him right here, how he processes, run the pass. It looks like it's going to be a draw play, a lead draw. He processes, nope, it's actually a pass. Now look at him close on Baker Mayfield, turn the corner, circle up the pocket, and make the sack on Mayfield. Just a really nice play from top to bottom, Kendall.
Yeah, this is exactly what I mean by those violent, active hands at the point of attack. And then, that pursuit, that angle that he takes, that's when you start to see the athletic profile. When he really starts firing his gun and getting downhill, he's up there with some of the best of them. But you got to get in the right position first. And I think that's probably one of the bigger weaknesses for him. You want to make sure you're in the right position before you fire that gun.
Yeah, that was a really nice play. And you're right, that former safety body type, but he kind of moves very similar to Milano
He does.
on that play. Really nice play from him. Again, processing, run to pass. And I'm trying to bring up one more play for us here. It looks like it's a little further down here at the 10
I wish I
mark.
could. I never got the timestamps for the actual huddle. I have the game timestamps. I wish I could have helped you.
Yeah, it's all good, man. We were having some issues bringing up Walker's film, but here he is, I think, shooting the gap on this zone run. So 51, he's right here, heavy set, multiple tight ends, obviously a heavy set here. Nick Chubb in the backfield, and he, again, fires his gun on this zone run, Kendall.
Yeah, you see that he reads the guard there, 75, and sees the combo block happening there, and he fires right past it. He wastes no time, and he identifies that this guy, 75, is going to try to climb and get to me at the next level, but he just runs right by him before that can even happen, gets in the backfield, makes that TFL. There are a lot of comparisons. When you watch him play and you see his aggressive play style, you can see a lot of Milano.
Yeah,
and I think
plays.
Yeah, and I think that'll give people pause in some ways where it's like, maybe if our third linebacker, if we get a third linebacker, we want a thumper, but the Bills really don't hang out in 3 linebacker personnels all that much. And even if they do more, I think they're going to want someone that's just trending more with the way that the offenses are going in the NFL. If you're going to have 3 linebackers out there, you better be damn sure that they can all play pass coverage. So I think both Anthony Walker and Camu Grugier-Hill can both do that. Yeah,
I'm glad you did it because I couldn't.
Don't worry, I looked up the I always forget this word, the I don't know, it's something like that. How you pronounce the name. I always look it up with guys like that, and
the phonetic pronunciation type.
Thank you, phonetic. That's the word.
Yeah.
I always mess that up. It's money. I can get the name, but I can't get that.
No, those are obviously the linebackers too. They got to be able to play special teams. Especially, you were kind of talking about the contracts of Klein and whatnot earlier, and Dodson obviously being given that year contract. So they got to be able to play special teams, and as we all know, special teams can decide some games. But with that said, again, we went a little long. We had some issues this time, but I thought overall, you guys picked some really good free agent prospects. Unfortunately, we weren't able to bring up some of the comments from the YouTube channel, so we appreciate everyone hanging with us for an hour and a half, and we are sorry that we are not able to engage like we normally do, but we thank you for tuning in and supporting us. So with that said, let's wrap it up. Kendall, let's start with you, man. Let everyone know where they can find you on social media and what you have going on this week.
All right, so everyone can find me on Twitter at Mersky Kendall down below. You're gonna find me more on the air raid hour this week now that I'm back from vacation, and I am finishing up my running back rankings. I've been diving into running backs recently for the draft. I wanted to see where the Bills would, if they would draft a running back before round 3, because they haven't shown us that they have or will. So I wanted to see if it was a possibility this year. So I dove into running backs. So now I'm like 12, 15 deep. So I'll be giving my top 10 running backs sooner rather than later, hopefully. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mersky Kendall and over at the Air Raid Hour as well as Film Room every Tuesday night.
Anthony, Mr. Workhorse, Mr. Newsbreaker. You're getting all these monikers and all these nicknames. I can't keep it straight. I can't keep your schedule straight and what shows you got going on, what appearances you have going on, as always. So the floor is yours, man. Let everyone know where they can find you and what you have going on.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT. Find me as the co-host here on the Film Room every single week. Find me as the host of Disguise Coverage live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Tomorrow's episode, or if you're listening on Wednesday, tonight's episode, I will have Mr. Aaron Quinn and Mr. Anthony Romeo on. We will be talking about addressing the Buffalo Bills offense in terms of the offensive line, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position groupings, how to improve, what to tweak, free agency, draft, how do you go about those things in the efforts to continue to surround Josh Allen with talent and move forward. And you can find me on Twitter in the meantime, breaking down college prospect film, NFL film, corners. I'm trying to figure out what corners do as like a position group because they're weird. I don't get them. But yeah, you can find me doing a lot of stuff on the old Twitter. Also running backs. I put out some Tyler Goodson stuff. It's not all corners. I'm just, we need one. You know what? It's not time for that. It's not time for that. But you can find me and all those places doing all that kind of stuff.
No, I appreciate you guys completing your homework for the week and doing a great job with that. We love doing the evaluation of college prospects, but also free agent prospects. So we're kind of playing the pro and college scout angles here in the Film Room. So for me, again, if you guys haven't checked out the Ed Oliver breakdown, get to the channel, take a look at that. It's not, these hour and a half sessions in the Film Room. It's, I think, 13 or 14 minutes, but you're going to learn about Ed Oliver's breakout season, some of his responsibilities, how teams tried attacking him, how the Bills used him in pass rush situations, all that good stuff, all the X's and O's, all the stuff that you come to Cover 1 for and the Film Room for, all wrapped into one. So I'm Erik Turner. That's Kendall and Anthony. And we'll see you next week in the Film Room.